Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our fourth session of our virtual workshop. We all know Mr. Dinç Uvendire. He is our group creative director, and today he will be talking about
Creativity. When we say creative, we mostly imply art-related things. For instance, the creative industry stands for music, cinema, literature, modern arts, performing arts. People in the creative department of an ad agency are called creatives. All of them have an artistic talent or a background in an art discipline. It is true that creativity is an essential part of arts, but is it all about arts? Is it only arts that must be fueled by the creativity? So today, I want you to think differently about creativity, how it can and will transform your life, especially in business, whether you consider yourself an artist or not. So if you are ready, let's start. So what is creativity really? To create means to make something exist that did not exist before. So literally, only God can create in its true meaning. We cannot create out of nothing. But the same definition tells us something about creativity, that it is about being new and different. We don't have to create out of nothing. We just need to be different. Two most common ways is make a combination of two existing things in a way that no one else did it before, or discover a new thing by looking at places where no one else looked before. When these two happen, and if the outcome does work, it's called a game changer, and sometimes a revolution. And sometimes accidents can give us new ideas. This is because our methods are built upon the proven and acceptable norms. So to reach to the new and the different, you must go away from acceptable to unacceptable, from the usual to the unusual. So you must misbehave a little bit. So this is how innovation works. Obviously, you need to learn the norm very well before you can go away from it. Why is creativity important? Without the new, there is no advancement. Creativity was present through all human accomplishments, from all the revolutionary inventions like the wheel to the theory of relativity, the new art forms such as cubism or jazz. There was always creativity. There is one man, his name is Edward de Bono. He's a physician, psychologist, mostly known with his works on creative thinking. He put it in this way. It's really lovely. He said, there is no doubt that creativity is the most important human resource of all. Without creativity, there would be no progress, and we would be forever repeating the same patterns. So to me, this is the most important take from today's presentation. It's really about what makes the human being different than the animals. That's an old question. If you really think about it, if you really think deep about it, what makes us different than the animals, it's not the communication, it's not the language, it's not the thinking or making judgment calls, or even strategic thinking. So many animals have these qualities, attributes. It's not collaboration, it's not the community, it's not the aesthetics, it's not the intelligence. If you really think about it, it's the ability to create. It is creativity, in other words, that really makes us different than all the species in this world. So as a human being, we all have the ability to create, to be creative by default. So why reserve the title to the artists only? According to the same guy, Edward de Bono, creative is only an adjective, it's not a noun. So people call themselves creatives are merely stylists. Indeed, we in the creative department are stylists. We style with shapes, words, motion. But when I tell my team to be creative, I don't mean to be more stylish. I always mean be different. Meaning get away from the usual and explore the unusual. You as well, tell yourself to be creative. It shouldn't mean to be more stylish. It should mean to think out of the box. In 2007, Apple launched the iPhone. In America, you could use the iPhone only on AT&T network. But a teenager called George Hotz didn't want to use AT&T. He wanted to use T-Mobile. He opened his iPhone, located the processor, scrambled the code, and reprogrammed it to work with any network. He unlocked it. Then he posted a video about it on YouTube, and he got 2 million hits because this was the world's first hacked iPhone. When he found about it, Steve Jobs wasn't pleased. He said, "This is a constant cat and mouse game we play. People keep trying to break in, and it's our job to stop them." But Steve Wozniak, his co-founder of Apple, didn't see it that way. He said, "I understand the mindset of a person who wants to do that, and I don't think of people like that as criminals. In fact, I think that misbehavior is very strongly correlated with and responsible for creative thought." That last line is so good. I'll repeat. Misbehavior is very strongly correlated with and responsible for creative thought. In other words, people who are scared of getting into trouble are going to have a hard time being creative. Creativity is nearly always a reaction against something, a desire to change things. That is why it causes outrage. That's why it goes against the rules. In 1907, Picasso exhibited his painting Les Demoiselles d'Avignon. It's a painting of prostitutes in a brothel. It combined for the first time the primitive tribal art with the cubism, and it didn't look like anything that was in the galleries. When he saw it, the influential art dealer Ambroise Voila said, "This is the work of a madman." The painter Braque said, "Picasso spits turpentine on our faces." So nobody liked the painting. But within a year, it was considered a game-changing work. Within a few years, it's considered as a masterpiece. Today, it's universally recognized as the painting that makes the birth of modern art. 10 years later, Marcel Duchamp sent a sculpture for exhibition in New York. It was simply a urinal with a signature on it. The committee were horrified. They refused to even have it in the exhibition. Not only that, but the sculpture was taken outside and destroyed. Subsequently, the sculpture is seen as the birth of conceptual art. So real creativity is a reaction against the status quo, a desire to change things. If there was no desire to change things, why would you do it? And when you bring something new, the unusual on the table, expect resistance always. Steve Jobs, he was considered as one of the most creative persons of the centuries. And he got fired from his own company because his ideas were found too radical and too risky by his own board of directors. But he went on starting up Pixar animation studios, and he found a computer called Next. So his work is considered as changing the movie industry. Later on, he was called back to Apple to lead the company, and he didn't only revolutionize the computer industry, but some other industries as well, including music industry. So if you want to see creativity, if you want to be inspired, don't look at advertising manuals or the design annuals. Instead, read biographies of people like Steve Jobs. We have one biography of him in our library at the office when we are open. Have your hands on it. You will see at least 30 creative ideas in his biography. From his early college years with his friend, he was hacking into the telephone system. So himself, he was a misbehave, a dropout from the college and all that. It's very interesting. I'm sure you will like it. Sports is another industry for great examples of creative minds, changing the way the game is played. Athletes, coaches, managers, even the presidents and club owners, franchise owners, when it comes to player traits. But all these great personalities like Muhammad Ali, Ayrton Senna, Maradona, Cruyff, Pep Guardiola, Kasparov, they have been referred as artists among other things because they did something new that no one else did before. In his first year in Chicago Bulls, a fan described Michael Jordan as poetry in motion. She said poetry, and not because he was aesthetically pleasing like a ballet dancer. No, but he was doing things that no one else had done before. He was not the most talented or the fittest athlete in NBA, And if you think about it, NBA is full of the top athletes, the best performers, and the most talented players already. He was different and new. He was creative. He was like a poet in that sense. And the thing is, he didn't do it for sake of creativity or entertainment. His motive was to win. He was a relentless person in that sense, very competitive. So creativity gives you a competitive advantage. You can add value to your service or your product and differentiate your business from the competition. As Orson Welles said, don't give them what they want, give them what they never dreamed of. So all that is established now. Creativity is very important. So let's dig into how to be creative. Creativity is not learned, rather it's unlearned. In 1968, there's a famous study. George Land conducted a research to test the creativity of 1,600 children ranging in ages from 3 to 5 who were enrolled in a Head Start program. This was the same creativity test he devised for NASA to help select innovative engineers and scientists. The assessment worked so well, he decided to try it on children. He retested the same children at 10 years of age and again at 15 years of age. The results were astounding. The result amongst 5-year-olds was 98%, 10-year-olds 30, 15 years old 12%, 280,000 adults was on average 2% creative. So clearly we see children are creative and we ask ourselves, why aren't adults as creative as children? As we get older, we adapt to the behavior of others around us. We feel the pressure of our peers and we want to fit in. Our educational systems restate the facts rather than asking us to explore new ideas. And as we progress through school, we narrow our field of study, choosing to become knowledgeable in a certain subject rather than others. As we become adults, we restrict ourselves even further. We establish the type of foods we like, the genre of movies we watch, we spend time with the same people, we limit ourselves to trying new things and new ways of thinking. We stop collecting ideas and we begin a process of information elimination. So this is what happens when you grow old. So when we look at the children, they question everything. So it's been said that at age of 5, children ask 120 questions a day. At age 6, they ask only 60 questions a day. And at age of 40, adults ask 4 questions a day. So as adults, we need to embrace a beginner's mind and ask questions instead of trying to find immediate answers. We need to pay attention to questions other people ask, especially those from the artists, scientists, and thought leaders. So suggestion here, collect questions you find compelling. Albert Einstein said, the important thing is to not stop questioning. Curiosity has its own reason for existing. Does our environment have an impact on our creativity? So as children, we are in colorful, stimulating environments, places that encourage play and exploration. As we get older, the environment around us starts to become very regimented and boring. Places that are meant for production, not playfulness and exploration. Perhaps it has an impact on our creativity, or perhaps this is a result of our being uncreative. So maybe both are true, but there is, of course, there is a difference. There's another thing, like instant judgment. Everybody knows that it is the enemy of creativity. That is certainly true because judgment will force us back to our present position. The brain is not designed to think creatively by nature, but it is designed to set up routine patterns of perception and behavior, and to make sure we do not deviate from those, we have something called judgment. It's a powerful tool to keep the brain keeping on its created routine tracks. So here I want to tell you that it is creativity is an unnatural process because it is set up to design these routine patterns. And this actually helps us in so many ways, because if this was not the case, we would be taking deep analysis and try to take decisions on everything that we do. Open the drawer, hold the glass, to walk, and all these basic things had to be like done with like some thinking, some processing, and we cannot do that. So the brain creates these ready-made patterns to put us on autopilot most of the time, and this is how brain is designed so we can function in the life. If we gonna talk a little more about this, it has a scientific basis because the nerve networks in the brain allow this incoming information to organize itself in the sequence and patterns. To help you understand this a little bit, think of picture this in your mind like a rain falling onto a landscape, and the water, forms itself into streams of water and eventually rivers. So brain, the network, the nerve network in the brain also works in a similar way. It is a self-organizing system. So think of this as two layers: a surface layer that receives the information and a deeper layer that processes that information. And in an active system, the information changes from the surface layer and flow towards the core layer, like the rain falling into a landscape. So it's a very simple, system. It eventually gets organized into streams and rivers, and such patterns are usually asymmetric. This means that we normally go along the main track without even noticing the side track. But if somehow we get across to the side track, the route becomes obvious when it happens. And this is the basis of both humor and creativity. So, and it only, shows its value after it happens. Before it happens, it might seem not logical, but it seems logical only after you see it. This is the thing about new ideas and creativity. And this is not a natural way of the brain. So you need to deliberately have some techniques or thinking. In other words, you need to think creatively to have these, cut cross sections. Cutting across these streams, pattern is called lateral thinking. Lateral means like horizontal. Lateral thinking, this has nothing to do whatever, with the right brain or the left brain thinking. It is simply, having these, those connections and the combinations that I mentioned in the beginning. And it's not a natural behavior for the brain. The purpose of the brain is to establish and use those routine patterns. And this is why creativity is not a natural process in the brain. In fact, it goes against the natural process of following patterns. So what I present here might seem theoretical, but it's a necessary base for understanding of creativity. What does lateral thinking enable us? It enables us to look at a problem from many different angles. So you don't go through the usual, the acceptable norm angles, but you see things differently, and this helps challenging our assumptions basically. So how to take these lateral thinking and use it in the in our everyday life? The first difficulty is to get time and space for creative thinking. There are those who think that creativity is only for special brainstorming sessions. And there are those who believe that creativity is not for them, but for artists, designers, and innovators. This is a dangerous and limiting attitude. Just as the ability to use the reverse shift is part of every driver's ability, the ability to use creative thinking should be part of every thinker's thinking skill as well. So it's definitely not limited to special people or special occasions. Anyone who has to do any thinking must develop this ability. So there is a book. Whoever is interested in to learn about lateral thinking, a must read is The Six Thinking Hat Systems, written by Edward de Bono. At first, there's specific techniques, and even this his six hats system seems strange and artificial. But seeming strange and artificial is actually an important part of their value. So creative thinking is different from normal thinking. It is not just normal thinking that is more free. It's not enough to be innocent and act like a child or being uninhibited and to have the creative attitude. It's not about that. We can use deliberate techniques like provocation. Provocation is a very strong technique, and you need to provoke your assumptions, movement, or sometimes a random entry. So in the six hat example, you pretend to have a different attitude towards a problem, like a very emotional route approach, or a very factual approach with zero emotions, or sometimes you see all the positive things, and you wear the black hat and you see only the negative things. It's like a pretend game, but it really helps you to break that norm, and you can discover different things. I recommend this book to whoever is interested in to understand the scientific basis of how brain works, especially how to think, how to improve your creative thinking. Creativity is like a muscle, he says. It must be stretched, challenged, and occasionally pushed past its comfort zone. I'd like to give a few tips for all of us to improve our creativity, and this is going to conclude my presentation. The first one is to collaborate. Andrew Ang, he is a lead scientist on research. He dedicated his life on AI and big data. He was formerly in Google, and now he's in a Chinese startup called Beidou. He said, and he doesn't believe the innovation is due to unpredictable flashes of genius. Rather, he says you can become more creative and innovative systematically. He said, in my own life, I found that whenever I wasn't sure what to do next, I would go and learn a lot, read a lot, talk to experts. I don't know how the human brain works, but it's almost magical when you read enough or talk to enough experts. When you have enough inputs, new ideas start appealing. Another tip, restore your creativity by doing something you love. It's a hobby, such as playing an instrument, running, or collecting memorabilia. You can help to relax and fight the stress while giving your creativity a boost. I recommend everybody to stick to what they love to do. It really helps creativity. And the last tip for today is walk. Stanford researchers found that walking boosts creative inspiration. They examined creativity levels of people while they walk versus while they sat. Was a big difference. The person's creative output increased by an average of 60% when walking. Steve Jobs was known for his walking meetings. Mark Zuckerberg has also seen holding meetings on foot. And perhaps we also in the Royal Plaza, we are more comfortable while walking, especially on the phone, or when you need to do some thinking, just go out of the block, have a little bit walk and come back. It will really, give a boost. So this wraps up my introduction about creativity, and I wanted you to think differently about being creative and to realize that it's a must for all of us, because only with new ideas, new thinking, we can really advance. Keep in mind today as technology advanced, creativity and its cousin innovation become a very desired attribute in employees, in employers, in medicine, in music, in design, in entertainment, in everything. So let's tell ourselves that we are creative and we can be creative. And this is going to give us that most advantage in our competition as a business especially. So this wraps up my creativity session part 1. I'm preparing for a part 2. I will go deeper in creativity in advertising. I will not talk so much science of the, the nerve structures, but I want to show, why it's important, especially in advertising, what kind of creative and competitive advantage that we are talking about. So I will dig deeper onto that one. I didn't cover it in today's presentation. So I'm happy to answer if you have any questions. So I need to check the chat box, I believe. Isn't it right? I cannot hear any of you, so I hope you enjoyed. How do you stay creative in a setting where norm and rules are strongly imposed? Yes, you need to go against it. You need to misbehave. You need to face the resistance. And don't try to fit in. but you need to continuously explore those new ideas. So you need to create some base for your arguments, and you need to give a chance also. To be honest, how do you fight the instant judgment of your creative output? It depends on the person that you are working with. If the person is judgmental, I think there's no point of fighting. So you cannot win every battles. Maybe you need to pick your battles carefully, but you need to give chance your new ideas, because you should know only the new ideas, the different will give that advancement. I'm not talking about revolutionizing breakthrough ideas. It can be really something small. It can be as simple as picking the right time to call a client. The creativity comes in so many different forms, and you don't always think of inventing the next iPhone or starting a new art form. No, I mean, this should be like part of our everyday life. What's the best way to defend your creative new idea, was Tim asked. I think you need to take your audience in your process of thinking. So you need to show, first of all, the importance of why being different is working for them. In our case, it's not about our problem, right? We are solving a problem of our client. So they are having a certain opinion about the subject, and you are bringing something new on the table. So if you show that context, how this new idea might work, this is the way to sell your thought, or make your audience to understand it. And that's why when we present a campaign or even a logo, we always put a small write-up, a rationale, to show the client where this idea is coming from. It's not meant to explain everything about the idea. Sometimes you put the creative thought and you expect the person to perceive it and understand it naturally. But it's always good to give the rationale, add some logic into it, how this idea can make it work. But like in every new idea, you need to test it. You need to see the reaction, and you need to give some time to it. Like in the examples of Marcel Duchamp and Picasso, and these people, they are universally considered as who started these new arts, the contemporary arts and modern art. In the beginning, by their peers, by their industry thought leaders, they were found like charlatans, and they were not really treated seriously. But the value of something great and new will come out eventually. What do you love to do as your hobby to enhance your creativity? It is really depends on what you love, guys. Like, and if you're not so sure, start something new. Like, I'm sure there's something that your heart is telling you or comfortable with. It can be, start learning how to play piano. Start do something different, so your brain is a bit surprised. Even like if you're driving to the office, don't use the same road. Just change the road that you take to Carrefour, for example. Don't take the same road. Drive from somewhere else. But pick a nice hobby. It can be a physical activity. It can be, I don't know, solving Sudoku puzzles. It can be reading. It can be running. It can be playing guitar, painting. You don't have to, do it. Just find something that you enjoy doing.
How about you, Dinch? What do you
Me?
do? Yeah, as your hobby.
As a hobby, I know it's changing. Like, I used to do different things. Now I do different things. So I'm doing so many different. I used to play guitar. I played several music instruments. Uh, Different. I do sometimes the urban sketching. Go to the street and have quick sketches of the buildings. I have so many interests. I don't know. I read a lot, but as like a constant hobby, I don't have one. The last few years, I'm trying to spend my time with my children, and it's interesting. Like we as parents, we can be easily very judgmental on our kids. But if we were in a open workshop and if our kids were like the subjects of our training, like as if they were the trainers and the teachers, there is a lot of special attitude wise to learn from them. Love the part you mentioned, having the beginner's mindset. Yes, it may result in absence of judgment. Yes, actually, like we can throw our ties and our jackets and sit on the floor, act like children. Maybe it might boost our creativity a little bit, but the real difference will come using those, that lateral thinking techniques that I mentioned, because that's where the power of creativity. Otherwise, everybody who acts like mad people and children could have come up with a great innovation, but usually it's not the case, right? So you need to really provoke and challenge your thinking and try to combine things that no one else managed to combine it before. So you need to be a bit methodic here. You don't expect it will come during a shower, that illumination will appear like all of a sudden out of nowhere. It's not the case. You need to work towards it, which is a good thing if you think about it. If it was just a inspiration thing, then it would be really limited to certain times or certain people, because you all can be creative. This is the amazing thing about it. Thank you, Dinç. Was it a book about the sick? Yes, I recommend that book, actually. It's a book, Edward de Bono, and I'm sure if you Google it, you will find the basis, the summary of it, but the book goes deeper into some techniques. The same guy wrote another book. It's the 6 walking boots. So a little bit do some research on it. I think you will find it interesting. How can we encourage creativity for adults? I think we adults are driven by the benefits and the results of it. So when we realize the advantage, what creativity brings into our lives, I think it will be like obvious. When we realize, all those great success somehow is, related to being creative. So that is maybe about the realization. There is something interesting here, like when we talk a lot about Steve Jobs and some few names. For instance, they are college dropouts. They couldn't fit into that college education system, and while they were at the school, they were interested in only a few classes, not everything. Like they took a class they loved and they ignored everything else, and eventually, they were kicked out. But it didn't stop them from being successful. For instance, Steve Jobs, when he was in the college, he liked the calligraphy lessons more. So he attended the calligraphy lessons, and later on, when they did the Macintosh, that was the only computer that enabled the users to have beautiful typefaces, the typefaces that are really designed aesthetically and functionally, where every other computer was using system fonts, and it looked like, those dot matrix printers. But Apple looked totally different, and it appealed to a wider audience immediately. And it was thanks to his, calligraphy classes that he took in the college years, when he was totally uninterested in education. But there was something that, caught his attention. So this is somehow the case, even in myself. I am a college dropout myself. I was studying shipbuilding and naval architecture, engineering. Sounds crazy now. And the only class that I was really like was the technical drawing. The technical drawings that we do for art and frame, and I did like a 1-year course without computer, of course, using those ink pens and the rulers. But I hated everything else, like the physics and the hydrodynamics and everything. It was not me. So I quit that college and started another college, fine arts faculty, and I studied design. But it was interesting. Till today, I use that, learning and that discipline of technical drawing. It somehow, helped in my career in a way. What would you say your starting point when you need to come up with a creative concept for our clients? Any recommendations? Yes, I have a recommendation here. I mean, the brief. The creative brief is very important, and to set the creative brief itself is a process. So clients will give you the brief from their point of view, and you take all that information, interpret it in a way, combine with your research and your strategy, and you create the creative brief, in which you clearly state what's your objective, what's the challenge, what are the things that we have to overcome that challenge, and what needs to be done. So that what needs to be done part must be the open part. So the creative ideas can, have the freedom to suggest anything. But before you come to that answer, what needs to be done part, you really need to understand what is the goal and what is the challenge and how we can overcome that challenge. So if you start like defining the problem or from the questions, and before you go into any answers, you work on your questions first, and then the creativity will, come from there. I think that's the starting point in terms of creative thinking and stuff. Finding inspiration, look elsewhere. And like if it is a subject like football, if you need to do something about football, a campaign or a design, don't look at what's done for the football. Yeah, look at it, but not for inspiration, just for facts and see what's been done before, just to understand, what are the things already developed there. So in your ideation, you don't repeat the same and the usual thing. So look somewhere else. I don't know, look cooking, chefs, restaurants, and maybe you will find something really interesting that can be applicable to football. It might sound strange, but when that nerve cells make a connection, and when you look back, it will make sense, So you need to try different things. So inspiration-wise, look anywhere else but that subject. That might be an interesting tip. If you need to take one thing from today, know that creativity is not limited for special sessions or only gifted people. It is a skill for everybody who has the ability to think. So thank you very much, guys. Thanks a lot. Thanks for the questions also.
Thank you so much, Dinç. It was great. Great session.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dinç.
Thank you. You're welcome. Thank you as well.